Media Network proudly presents a weekly exploration of various spiritual practices with renowned spiritual authors, coaches, teachers, and Dr. Tracy Brown, RScP.
And now, here's Tracy.
Hey everybody, we're here, we're live. It must be Tuesday at noon Mountain Time. My name is Tracy Brown and you are joining me for poetry, prayer, and practice. Every week there is the opportunity for us to dive a little bit more deeply into poetry and how it can either be a spiritual practice or can guide us into going more deeply into spiritual understanding. Prayer, how it works, why it works, how to use it, how to grow your comfort and your confidence in terms of using prayer in your life, and practice. What are some spiritual practices that really work, especially those that might be a little bit different than the two or three that you hear most often about, maybe prayer and meditation or saying affirmations? And maybe how do we use those in a way that is a little bit different, a little bit personalized, a little unique? And some weeks I have a guest with me, some weeks I don't, but today I do, and I'm so excited about it. So my guest today is Reverend Rafe Ellis, and we're going to talk about endings, because as we are having this conversation, we are approaching the end of calendar year 2023. And I don't know, it's neither good nor bad. It just is. So how do we bring our spiritual principle to bear in that context of endings, or the year ending and getting ready for a new year to begin? What spiritual principles might be at play? We're going to talk all about that. And if you know Rafe, or if you know me, then you won't be surprised if we just happen to talk about other stuff too, because we don't know where it's going to go. We just know how we're going to start talking about endings. So let me tell you three random things about Reverend Rafe Ellis. So, number one, he is an ordained minister currently providing leadership at Columbia Center for Spiritual Living in Columbia, Maryland. Number two, Rafe Ellis loves to fish. That's all I'm going to say about that. And number three, Rafe Ellis was my first guest, or he was a guest on my first poetry, prayer, and practice show. And so I'm so glad to have him back with me on this show near the end of the year. Welcome, Reverend Rafe.
Good afternoon, beloved.
What else do you want people to know about you? I just picked three random things to keep me from talking for 30 minutes about who you are.
I am insanely in love with the messiness of this human life. Yeah.
You live in a way that I would say that is true.
Yeah.
So anything else?
No, that pretty much covers me, really.
So I'm so glad you said yes when I was like, why don't you come back? You started the year, come back and end the year, and we can talk about endings, like really. And so thank you for saying yes.
Betcha.
this morning, literally this morning, and I wasn't thinking about the fact that we were going to have this conversation. It was just in my morning practice. A lot of times I journal. And this morning, what came from the journaling was this treatment, this prayer, affirmative prayer that I'm going to share. And then I think it'll give us a couple of places to jump from.
Yeah.
Okay. So this prayer is endings. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Autumn turns into winter and winter into spring. One year ends and another begins. Each inhale becomes an exhale. That which ends provides the beginning for that which follows. The one source of all of this is the source of all cycles. The infinite intelligence and boundless love that creates life designs in cycles. The truth of cycles is experienced constantly. The evidence of endings serving as beginnings are plentiful. My endings are beginnings. I see endings all around me. I experience endings with each breath I take. I understand endings are the portals through which creation births new life. So it is easy for me to claim and declare the ending of this calendar year as a bold and bright beginning. I do not deny the year as I know it is coming to an end. This calendar year ends and the number indicating a new year activates. I do not fear this change. I have no need to fear endings. I welcome the ending because I know it is the closure required to experiencing something new, something exciting, different, transformational, or enriching. I say goodbye and thank you to the ending of this year. So much I have done and so much I have learned. There has never been a year exactly like this, and this year will never come again. It has been and will be amazing. I end this year like I end each exhale. Complete release, trusting the next breath is ready to be inhaled. I end this year like I end each day, ready to rest, retire, and be refreshed, trusting the order for the perfect next day has already been placed. I end this year like I end each prayer, in complete faith that everything is good or leading to good. So, with deep gratitude, I prepare to celebrate this year and its many blessings. With deep gratitude, I savor the delicious feast I've been served this year. And with deep gratitude, I begin to anticipate the goodness to come. Yes, and amen. Ashe, and so it is.
And so it is.
Endings. People are so afraid of endings.
I think the most challenging thing for us in this human iteration of ourselves is really embracing and embodying the truth of the both and that we are eternal beings experiencing a very finite experience, that the essence of us is eternal and the container of us is quite temporal, quite impermanent. Um, and everything we've set up here on planet Earth is in that temporal mindset that, we understand, our brain understands the world through starts and stops. through beginnings and endings, through up and down, through big and little. And the spiritual us doesn't care, doesn't recognize. I'm not sure what the accurate words are, because spiritually everything just is. And I think, especially in metaphysics, we confuse mind with brain,
Yes, say more.
right? That most of the time, what I experience when we're talking about my mind or in my mind, what we're really talking about is our brain, which is the hard drive for this computer of a person. And it only possesses past information, right? And so for me to have something new, I have to access something beyond my brain, because it can only replicate what it knows, which is past.
Yeah, and so yeah, in the context of endings, if I am anchored to the past, if I'm anchored to what has already happened, I don't want there to be an ending because I don't know what's coming next. I'm not able to control it, or my brain is telling me it may be dangerous. It's the unknown. So anything unknown is dangerous to the brain. Um, so that kind of makes sense. And I struggle with it sometimes because I guess it's been a long time since I have um, been afraid of endings, whether they're in relationships or in with clients or in stages of life, in the cycle of life. It's like, oh, it's going to end. This too shall pass.
Mhm.
And so I'm more focused on what are we going to do next?
Yeah. Well, and I think quite a few of us have learned and are continuing to learn how to build a cooperative, collaborative relationship between our little lizard brain, this the that little amygdala back there, that really needs finite, definitive, very limited, specific answers to establish our sense of safety, versus our cerebral cortex, which is constantly processing. And oftentimes, those two parts of our brain are really at odds with each other, because the cerebral cortex takes the information that it has and it starts playing with it. And when it does, the amygdala senses that uh-oh, we're in the unknown now. Stop it. Yeah. And it's I mean, for me, that's a beautiful spiritual practice, is to have a kind, loving, gentle dialogue between the amygdala and the cerebral cortex.
The amygdala is not kind.
No, because it's terrified.
Yes.
That's its whole MO. It knows, and part of it, I think, is to recognize, and I laugh when I say this, that we're all sensational beings, right? And when I say sensational, yeah, we're magnificent, we're marvelous, we're sensational that way. And the way we know we're alive is based on our senses, based on the sensations that we feel. And so oftentimes we create things that terrify us, roller coasters, amusement parks, haunted houses, movies that terrify us because at the same time, they ignite all of our senses and we feel incredibly alive even in that terror, right? It's an interesting thing that we do. We scare ourselves into happiness.
That's sick. Real, true, and sick.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing we do. And what if we just recognized that, leaned into that with the same excitement, the same anticipation when we're in spiritual practice? That we have no idea how our lives are going to unfold.
Yes.
And to be excited about that and to begin to train our amygdala to recognize that as a good thing. Because after all, it is our brain,
Yes.
right? And we do get to tell it how to behave.
I'd say we are responsible for the programming that goes into our brain as adults. A lot of our early programming we did not have any control over, but as adults, we gain the ability to choose what we want to input into our brain. So, yes, I could be focused on that.
Yeah.
And as I'm thinking, many times it's the people who have had or who are having a really, really good year or a really, really good experience. They're the ones who don't want it to end.
Well, we don't want it to end because I think we have experienced something that we didn't see coming. And it's hard for us to imagine that it could be even better,
Yes.
right? I didn't know it could be this good. And now you want me to let go of this because it might be even better?
Not possible.
How?
Right.
Right.
Not
Um,
possible. What are you talking about? This is my life is good, or this is a great job and I'm enjoying it, or yeah, I'm in this relationship and I don't want it to change, because change in many of our minds does not equate to improve.
no.
Change equates to disaster, darkness, confusion, chaos.
Yeah, I studied Fred Luskin for a while. He is a professor at Berkeley, and he's a psychologist, and his work has really been focused on forgiveness. And he spoke at the Center for Spiritual Living in Santa Rosa when I was there. And he spoke on this whole thing of change, right? And how we lie to ourselves and we tell ourselves that nobody likes change, which is profoundly not true, right? Because if nobody liked change, the parking lots would be full of people screaming at the sun for coming up every day, moving across the sky and going down. We wouldn't have an appreciation for sunrises and sunsets because those are all change, right? And what he said during that talk was, it's not change that we dislike, is that what we don't like is not getting what we want. That the only time any of us ever get angry is because we didn't get something changed, but we didn't get what we want, which instantly pissed me off when he said it. I thought, well, that's interesting. And being the ridiculous man I can be, I spent a whole year journaling about every change, trying to prove him wrong, only to prove that the only time I got upset with change was when I didn't get what I wanted.
Question. because what I immediately thought of is, for me and for a number of clients I do coaching, spiritual coaching with, the discomfort with change is not that I didn't get what I wanted, but I didn't know what I wanted. So, I mean, like, things changed. It's not that I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted. So this isn't working for me. I find out it's not what I wanted, but I didn't know. I didn't have a goal or a vision or a destination in mind. It's just, yeah, I don't want this, but I don't know what I do want.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Like, it's kind of not
Yeah.
making sense as I'm saying it to me, but it's, I don't get what I want is, to me, very clear. I wanted this, and the universe served up something different, or the person I'm working with did something different. I didn't get what I wanted. But more often than not, I know I don't like this. It is a change, but I kind of didn't place an order with the universe in this area or aspect of my life.
Yeah, I think as in human language, we play fast and loose with the word want a lot. Um, especially when we're observing other people's behavior, how easy it is to decide, well, they're doing that because they want to, rather than they habit to.
Right.
That a lot of our habits have nothing to do with want. And many of us were not raised with permission to even explore
Right.
what we want.
Right.
And so to really dive into what do I want, first I have to navigate the idea that what I want is even possible, that I even have permission to become aware of what I want. Because so much, I mean, we're all raised with this incredibly simplistic, seemingly permanent, becoming more complex by the year reward punishment paradigm. Right? And so we're conditioned, literally unconsciously conditioned, to want what other people want from us in order to get their attention, which is that deepest childhood want, to be seen, to be recognized, to be validated. And so what I find is that the majority of our choices are based in just simply that desire, that want to be seen, to be recognized, to be validated. And how dare us want something beyond that? Because wanting something more than that may interfere with that. Because if I really know what I want, you may not approve.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't approve, then I lose those other things that I've been wanting and seeking for 64 years. Now, what do I do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm taking that in and still processing, the previous. And it's like, oh, yeah, you gave me, or the universe provided something I don't want, and in that moment I realize I don't want it, so I don't like it, and change is the cause of it. So I'm realizing that I have, in the course of doing this metaphysical work and living from that place for decades now, that I have transformed my belief and my relationship with change, especially when I'm not getting what I want, in quotes, I have transformed it to the point where I've trained myself to see what's going on and to trust in my ability, my power, my authority to take whatever is happening and choose what I want next. So I think maybe that's the piece around endings that I didn't even consciously realize that part of the reason I'm okay with endings is because I take seriously the importance of me intending and or choosing what happens next.
Yeah, and I think we get to choose. I know we get to choose. And I'm also very aware that I don't get to choose the specific outcomes. That what I have experienced as being most successful is to choose principle, to
Yes.
choose to experience joy, and to stay out of scripting how that will happen, or when that will happen, or what it will look like when it happens.
Yeah, we're in the same place,
Yeah.
right? I get to choose my emotional tenor. I get to choose how I respond to what's going on, but I get to intend, my choices around future. I get to set clear intentions for the universe to deliver, but I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't get to control. I get to choose. Now, I know they both start with the letter C. I'm really clear about that. But I know they are not the same. And I think that's where a lot of people get entangled in their spiritual practice because they think choose means control.
Yeah. Well, and what's coming to mind is the Ernest Holmes quote: "When we create a demonstration, we must accept all that comes with it."
Yes, yes, yes. I know I'm shaking my head no, but yes, yes, yes.
And I will never. I was teaching a class, and one of the students actually had highlighted that from the reading, and I found it really interesting that I read the same thing and glossed right over that. It's one of the beauties of teaching, is that I always learn, and how profound that has been. When it's like we want a relationship, and we want it to be all of these things, and we have our checklist, and that's beautiful. And then we connect with somebody that lives in a different state,
Yes.
or we're treating for the perfect job, and the job that we have begins to unravel and fall apart. Right? Because in order for us to have that perfect job, the one we're in has to end. And I think many of us, what we're really saying is we want our boss to change. We
Yep.
want everything in my current job to change to meet what I want it to look like, but I don't want to move, and I don't want to change jobs. And then we start getting what we want, and it means a whole lot of endings that we didn't anticipate, in order to have this incredibly exciting, profound beginning.
No, I don't want any new beginnings. No, keep them away from me. Like, let me put up my shield. No new beginnings, but I want all this other stuff to go away.
Right. Yeah. I want things to change. And if it could all stay the same while that happens, that'd be really cool.
Could I just wiggle my nose like Samantha in Bewitched and have it be all different to exactly my specifications
Yes.
without the process that goes with that? So, this process of autumn weather, autumn turning to winter, okay, so we have to have winter. Okay, if you say so. I can't, right? I could do without it maybe, but okay. So yeah, was in Egypt for a couple of weeks. I come back to Texas, and in the last couple of days, it's been in the 30s temperature wise, the 30s Fahrenheit. And I'm like, it's too cold. It's too cold. I don't even want to go outside, but I have to go skating because skating's important. So I have to bundle up and put on all these layers. And, but in my mind, I'm fighting what I know is one, inevitable,
Hmm.
two, desired, because I do want winter to be here, because winter then leads to spring, and spring then leads to summer. And right, it's like, even though I know all of that, I don't want, I want the beautiful fall days where it's cool enough to have a heavy sweater and I can wear my boots, but I'm not cold.
Yeah.
And it's like a really silly example, but it's what I know I do in my humanness
Hmm.
with things that really do matter.
Yeah. And imagine if we all got our way, the
Oh,
chaos we would live in,
please. Right.
right? And it would change a lot of things, because just taking the seasons like you've brought up, right? There are requirements. The wildlife and the plants require the things that happen differently in each season, right? The dormant phase of winter is necessary for the beauty of spring. Absolutely
Yes.
necessary. Um, and so, what is necessary that creates my own seasons of change that I'm not seeing? When I'm in that place
Ooh,
of discontent, what is the necessary cycle that I'm resisting?
that right there. What is necessary? What is necessary to seed, to grow, to provide for that which is coming, which is so amazing, I can't even imagine it. Like, like, can I remember that
Yeah.
as a spiritual principle, as a spiritual foundation, that, oh, this what seems like insanity that I am going through, oh, this divorce, this diagnosis, this disaster, this, it is actually necessary to either deconstruct or to provide what is required for the good that is on its way to me.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I'm also aware that so often there's a borderline to that. Like, I get it, I know it. And it would be easy to shift over to spiritual bypass and not really deal with what's going on and just be, oh, I think positive. There must be good that's coming from this. And oh, it's terrible right now, but it's not terrible. It's not terrible. It is God working in my life.
The image of poinsettias came to mind because my understanding is that in order for poinsettias to do what they do this time of year, they are cut back to the soil level and then literally kept in a dark closet for quite a period of time and then brought back out into the light. And am I willing to be trimmed back? Am I willing to voluntarily go into the darkness that my brain screams, don't go? Am I willing to intentionally? And I love the word intention because the root of it literally means to stretch, to be in tension. Am I willing to go into the darkness? Am I willing to go into that place where I can't see, I can't hear, I just feel all the feels that I've been avoiding or running from in order to truly blossom? Am I willing to do that? To move from one ending to a beginning?
Mostly we have been grappling with what about the times when we are hesitant to, or we're fighting, or we're resisting the change, like something is coming to an end, right? And we're pulling away from that. Say, Sporty says, even when we've seen it come before, we choose to dive into denial and expect or accept disbelief. Like, we've been focusing on that, but I want us to shift just a little bit because, on the other hand, often it's happened in my life and I've seen it often in others as well. Let's say, since we're talking about the year ending, let's say you've had a year that's been really challenging in several different ways, right? And then all of a sudden you're eager for the change. You're eager, like, oh, great. When the number of the year changes, that's over. And now everything is going to be hunky dory, whatever that means. Like, right? It's going to be fabulous because the calendar year has changed. And so, yeah, that's a little pretend magic and disbelief.
Mhm.
Well, how do we bring some spiritual grounding to that as well?
Again, I go back to Ernest Holmes, where he talks about we really can't have everything we want. What we get is what we have the consciousness to create. And so if I convince myself that there's something magical that happens with the change of literally one number from 2023 to just changing the 3 to a 4, that magically fixes things, I'm not taking responsibility for my consciousness. I'm not taking responsibility for what I'm choosing, which is the most powerful spiritual thing I know of that I have, is the power of choice. That I get to choose. And this whatever it is that creates and created each of us and creates as us never judges, never pulls away, never withdraws itself from its creation. That's the freedom of choice we have. And yet we seem to use it the least intentionally and the least consciously. And sometimes I wonder, do we really get the power that we have to choose? And if we don't like what shows up, great, choose again. That we're not stuck with any of it. We get to continuously choose to create the lives that we want, that we choose to create. And, you know, when I teach classes, it's funny because after about the third class, even if it's new students, they catch on pretty quickly that, oh, he's going to talk about the R word again, responsibility. It has become the R word. But with great responsibility comes great freedom.
Yes.
And sometimes things play out differently than we can even begin to imagine. I mean, what? I'm 64, so 35 plus years ago, I chose me over my birth family. And it wasn't, I mean, I was very intentional about it. There was a lot of ugliness that had transpired in the first 30 some years. And I came to a place in my spiritual journey where I had to choose because it was so toxic. I couldn't continue. And I reached out and said, this has been my experience and this is where I'm at. And I would love to connect and let's learn how to be friends. And then we'll learn how to be family. And it didn't happen. And it opened the door to an incredible depth of grief that the human realm was incomprehensible. And yet there I was in the middle of it, experiencing it. And that grieving took me to a place of freedom where I just moved on with my life with no expectations, no resentment. I did the forgiveness work, I did all that. And so here all of a sudden, I get a new job in Columbia, Maryland, not thinking at all about any of that that transpired years ago. Right? And lo and behold, what unfolds out of this is a reconnection with my birth family that is profoundly healed. Profoundly healed. Yes, lots changes in 35 years. So lots changed for them as well.
Right.
And I'm very aware of the healing that happened without one conversation, without any debates, without any struggle, that our relationships have healed and grown in what in this physical realm looked like complete absence.
Mm-hmm. And there is a part of that that is also about the intention set decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship, I mean, what I heard you just say, I'm open to a relationship where we learn to be friends
Mm-hmm.
and then redefine what it means to be family.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that can happen now. And the opportunity presents itself because it can happen now. It's not a return to the quote unquote known past. it is the birth of the desired future. So, I mean, that is so cool. And another thing that, as I'm listening to you, that comes up in this whole idea of endings being beginnings is that sometimes we think, and most of our examples so far have been about endings that are they're happening and they're leading immediately and directly to some new outcome. So I love that you shared this example because the ending, for all intents and purposes, appeared to be okay, it really is ending, it's over, it's done, never to be experienced or dealt with again.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, it was the dormant poinsettia in the darkness, just like in the spring, that tulip has been in the darkness until it pops its head through the soil and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful tulip.
Yeah.
And so, okay, it took a few decades
Took a little while.
and it's a new beginning.
Yes. And I, even that, it's like we don't ever, we use the terms beginning and ending to help us navigate this human realm, right?
Yes.
And so it's back to that embracing the both and that yes, this year is going to end, but not really, because everything that happened in the eternal as well as the physical. And so everything gets carried forward. It just morphs and shapes and changes. Um, you know, I'm studying again Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief.
Mm-hmm.
And he so brilliantly explains how cells learn from their environment and carry that learning forward genetically,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, we're born with beliefs since the beginning of time. Is all in there. I think that's one of the things that's so challenging for us to change them is because they are many of them operating at the cellular level. The exciting thing to me is the same cells that learned it can learn something else,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that's like cellular ending of information and beginning of new information. That's what we have available to us to be a part of that. How much more excitement can I stand? that, that,
Well,
yeah.
it is exciting, and like I realized as we've been talking and said a few minutes ago, I don't know that I fully have realized how much of the way I am now is the result of my having this understanding that, endings are beginnings. Endings are not concrete and they're not necessarily bad. And they're right. All of these things that I've learned over decades of applying spiritual principle or universal principle to the the day-to-day experience of my life. So I have a request, and that is, so I started us in this conversation with the treatment that just spontaneously came as I was journaling this morning. And I'm going to ask you to end this conversation with a treatment about endings being beginnings, change. And of course, knowing you, that's all about the R word. And but yeah, would you like anchor us in a treatment? And before you do, I just want to let people know if they want more of this kind of wisdom and want to know more about you or listen to recordings of talks, Sunday talks, or know about the classes that you're offering, that they can visit columbiacsl.com and check out all the resources and the links that are there. So, would you please take us into the
I will indeed. And so, with this breath, I recognize God, the infinite, this ever present allness, this unformed source, substance. I recognize, I know again, I recognize that it truly is all there is, that it has no beginning and no end. It has simply always existed. And out of it is born beginnings and endings that we call experience. I am an experience in the mind of this one. Mind, as I'm using it in this moment, is equivalent with that source, that substance. And so I know that I am an idea in the mind of the infinite, a desire, a want of itself to experience itself as this thing I call my life. And what I know to be true of me is true of all life. Each and every expression that has ever been and ever will be is an intentional, on purpose, divine idea, a divine desire within the heart of creation itself to expand its experience of itself as its creation. And so it creates in this idea of beginning, of being, of experience. And in this physical realm, we experience endings, endings that are really transformation of form back to the unformed. Each and every expression fully infused with the full power and presence of that which it is made out of. And so, this ability to create new is fully present in, through, and as each and every one of us. To use that heart, that imagination, to create newness, newness of experience, newness of form, expansion within the whole. Knowing that in this physical realm, every ending is simply a cataloging of that experience in the divine eternality of creation. That while we experience an end, we are that with no beginning and no end. And so we lean into this idea, this structure of beginnings and endings, fully aware, fully embracing the both and. That as this year, this calendar experience of 365 days comes to a close, comes to an end, that as 2024 comes to an opening, and in that moment of transition, that we are profoundly aware of the temporal and the eternal. That the year changes, and yet the changeless essence of each of us just continues to expand, evolving our experience. That we set intentions from that essence, that we refuse to be limited by the temporal and empowered by the eternal, that we embrace the unknown, that we step fully into our responsibility of ownership, knowing that in that ownership, in that responsibility, we ignite a freedom of choice that absolutely surpasses the human understanding. And yet, it is the most real thing there is. This freedom to create, this freedom to choose, and to choose awe and wonder over predictability and certainty, to choose this infinite excitement of now what over the finite now what. So grateful to know the beauty of how this works. So grateful to experience the certainty that it does work every time it's employed, every time it's used, that our agency, our authority is divinity, and it works every single time. Whether we choose it consciously or choose it unconsciously, it is always working. Grateful, 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 grateful. And so, in this gratitude, from this gratitude, I reaffirm my sacred yes to be a container and a portal of the infinite expression of life, to love and be loved, to see and be seen, to end and begin with every breath. Grateful, grateful, grateful. And so, knowing it's done, I let go. I let go, I let it be, because I know it is done and done perfectly. And I invite you, if any of this has resonated with you, to embrace it, to own it as your own, as we say together. And so it is.
And so it is. Thanks, Rafe Ellis.
You're welcome, Tracy Brown.
And that's a wrap on this week's episode of Poetry, Prayer, and Practice. I'm so glad that you have decided to join us, and I hope that you are looking at and experiencing endings in a spiritually grounded way as we end 2023 and head into 2024. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks for watching. Join us again next week, or watch on demand at www.ntmedia.org or youtube.com/newthoughtmedia network. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Learn more at www.ntmedia.org.